Tele. Now this is a US Tele, and fortunately it has the waveform saddles. Now I just had one of my subscribers sort of asking about the 3 saddles for the 6 strings on a Tele. What I mean by the waveform is this is canted like so, this is canted like so, and then the last saddle is canted the other way. And it took a while for Fender to get around to it because there's multiple companies out there, Callahan and Glendale and Wilkinson and Joe Barden, and I'm sure there's more, that were making replacement brass compensated 3-way saddles for replacement on Telecasters. Well, Fender sort of jumped into the game now. I guess they were losing some market share. So we'll see how accurate these ones are. I know the Glendale ones were spectacular. Machining looks pretty good on this. It doesn't look quite as tight as the Glendale or the Callahan saddles. So I'm purposely doing this over the body assembly with a nice big droppable trough, where if it takes you a few times to get that thing screwed into place, you're not worried about it hitting the floor. Get that started. So I'm feeding this in from the bottom side up. Ooh. That's why you've got this big leather trough. It just takes one little slip up and then that little adjustment screw bounces off into infinity and you end up going on a search mission for 4 hours trying to find it. Okay, all right. We can breathe easy. It's wound in place now. So we're going to wind that right through. I wanted to adjust this so that the actual fastener is as close to flush as possible. And I think we're pretty well there. Happy with that. Back to the guitar. I am going to pull that spring off and clip it back as well. We were kind of running out of adjustment. Okay, we're approaching moment of truth here. Well, it can be a little bit of a sobriety test lining up that canted threaded hole. So I know that it basically goes like slightly like this on that angle. Let's see how lucky we get. Oh baby, just that little drop of oil. I tried putting it in dry and I was striking out. Okay, here we go. Let's have another look at this action now. Okay, I'm not really concerned about the intonation at this point. I just want to make sure that we've got enough adjustment to get those outside saddles down tight. That is where it starts to grab. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hike up these middle 4 strings right up out of the way. Line up those strings across the post. There's obviously no notches in these saddles to actually hold the strings in place, so I need to initially just spread them out so that they line up with the pickup pole. We definitely have a match to the fingerboard radius. So now I'm going to tune the guitar. I had another person email me this morning about getting a refret on a maple neck. And that is kind of many a varied thing, depending on the actual finish that was used. Now, if you look closely here, you can see that this lacquer basically goes right over the frets, and you see how it pools up at the intersection of the bottom of the crown and the actual wood of the fingerboard. This poses an extra challenge, because when you remove those frets, well, you're pretty well faced with leveling the fingerboard, installing the new frets, and then doing what Fender did in this case, which was blow right over the frets after they're installed. Now, there are some Fender guitars, especially the Japanese kind of mid-80s Fenders, which were fantastic, nitrocellulose lacquer, and those ones you could actually get the frets out without disturbing the finish. So when the finish is not sprayed right over top of the frets, well, that changes the game completely. Those frets can be removed quite easily, but these ones pose a completely different challenge. Just wanted to point that out. In the case of this thicker finish, even though you don't actually see it, you do need to heat up and score around that nut to get it out cleanly. You would have seen that illustrated in that last Strat floating tremolo video. I saw something that showed up recently on my feed online. The product was a feeler gauge set that was $10.95. I buy these for $2 at the local surplus store. But that's not what I want to show you. Here's what I want to show you. So once you take it out of the assembly, then you can pick and choose whatever thickness that you might want to allow at the nut as a safeguard. There was another product they were pitching that was $150. So far, we're $2 in. Let's go to the guitar. What I've got is I've got two very flexible feeler gauges. Stick those underneath the strings and then just bring this elastic band up. And that flexes perfectly to the radius of the fingerboard. So now I've got my protective guard, which I never use anyway, but I can understand somebody that's new to this having this protective guard. I'm going to use it in place just to sort of demonstrate. Now as we file these down to their final depth, we have that protection for the surface of the fingerboard. And I think that was the idea of what they were sort of getting at. I've stacked up those feeler gauges which add up to the same height as the fret, so that's 55 thou. For string clearance, I'm adding 14 thou. So what we're doing here is we're allowing 14 thou clearance so that when you finished filing, you're not buzzing against the first fret. These are kind of like training wheels, I suppose, for learning how to file out a nut accurately. Okay, so I'm making my way across. So I got that protective feeler gauge in place. I know now that I can file low enough to touch that feeler gauge, which I've just done. And I know I'm safe there. I don't normally do this, but it's not a bad idea. Super cost-effective way to do this. Like I said, I got a grand total of $2 tied up into this, and I've got total control, plus or minus a thou. Let's try our D. This definitely speeds up the procedure for the compensated nut, because as any of my students will attest, there's been lots of times where they get right to the home stretch. All it takes is one file stroke too far, and you're starting over. I know some people will sort of fill it in with goop and stuff, but it's just not my style to do that. See, you have an actual oral test here. You could feel and hear that file hit the feeler gauge. So it's not like you got a big investment here. The set of feeler gauges was $2. So what we got there is probably, I don't know, 35 cents or whatever. Okay, this is working pretty good. Well, I'm glad I saw that picture online. It's not a bad idea. We're down to our second string. Now we've got, like I said, we had, what did we allow there? We got 13 thou of clearance above the 55 thou fret height. Okay, there's our second string. This is one of the reasons I like to elevate that nut right to nose level, so I can actually see not just that I'm filing the right depth, but I check my string spacing as I go. See, so that's actually touching, but there's still plenty of clearance. So I'm going to leave that one for now. We're going to go to that last string. And it's pretty well done, but I'm just going to finish it up. Okay, well, you know something? Now we can pull that feeler gauge right out. Now we'll check all the way across again. I'm going to set these aside, tape them together. I'll just keep them stashed here in the TechDeck trough there at the front, and I'll use this again and again. Not a bad investment for less than $2. Okay, Steve's Tele is done, and there's a detailed play-by-play on every move I made on this one, and there's quite a lot of moves I made to make this correct on my Patreon channel. So this is what everybody does, right? They play the open string and the 12th fret. Okay, good. Try playing this, the 7th fret corresponding octave. And then play the open string and the first fret. Okay, here's the A string open, 12th fret, 7th fret, and octave. Open and first fret. Okay, same deal with the D string and 12th fret, 7th fret, octave, open string and first fret. Okay, here's the 3rd string and 12th fret. 7th fret, 3rd string and octave. And open 3rd string, first fret, 2nd string and octave, and first fret, 2nd string, 7th fret, and octave. First string open and 12th fret, 7th fret, and octave. First string open and first fret. Now, after having a couple of hundred videos out showing time after time after time the values of a completely regulated guitar with a compensated nut, it really comes down to the chords. And this is why I do the same chord in multiple positions all over the neck and go through a series of different chords in different positions so that you really get a chance to check how accurate your intonation is. So we'll start with the C major 9 chord. Next position is an E major 7th, another E major 7th, and another E major 7th. Okay, so we'll go to the A minor 9, first position, and the exact same chord, 1 octave higher. And then your garden variety D chord. That F sharp is not sharp. So once again, I've mirrored 2 chord progressions. First progression, second chord progression. And here's what those 2 chord progressions sound like together. Added a third part now, so we've got kind of 3 layers of harmonic mechanisms, in this case key of A major. So we've got those first 2 chord progressions layered, and I've just added these 6.